Well, hi, everybody. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I want to say thank you to the We Tonglen community for having me on as another free webinar host. I love the resources and support that this site offers, so thank you for having me on. Um, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, and I specialize in helping clients navigate relationship crises. These are namely crises that have been brought upon by uncovering addictions, pornography use, substance abuse, infidelity, and other forms of betrayal trauma. And today we're going to talk about 4 steps to help you regain control of your mind, body, and emotions during your relationship crisis. And these steps can be extra helpful for those who have been living in long-term crisis in environments where there is high manipulation, high levels of gaslighting, and high levels of uncertainty and stress. Um, all of you who are attending today are deeply impacted by relational trauma and are likely here because you're in crisis right now. I want you to understand that there are 2 tidal waves that betrayal traumas get hit from after uncovering unknown addictions. Again, porn use, substance abuse, infidelity, and other forms of emotional abuse that occur at the hands of their trusted loved ones. So first, there's this huge tidal wave of trauma from discovering that the person you've loved the most and made yourself most vulnerable to has been lying, gaslighting, manipulating, and more. It can leave a betrayed partner to feel very scared, very uncertain, unable to trust their partner, their entire environment, and everyone else around them. Then, due to the nature of being in this crisis day after day, living under such uncertainty and stress, the betrayed partner is hit by a secondary tidal wave of feeling like they have lost themselves in all this. They are now consumed by overwhelming emotions that they just don't know what to do with or how to control. There's anger, rage, intrusive thoughts constantly spinning around, confusion, sadness, fear, and hopelessness, and they take over the betrayed partner's day-to-day life, leading them to wonder when they are ever going to feel normal again. The constant crisis can leave the betrayed partner feeling out of control or hijacked by the emotions and stress. And so living in the state of a constant crisis can cause the betrayed partner to feel like they're acting out of character. They just don't feel like they're responding in a way that's them. They're screaming, crying, throwing things, breaking things, making threats, struggling to even just form words to make basic sentences or to understand what's going on. And they'll find themselves constantly swinging between extreme emotions. So swinging over maybe to anger, hurt, loss, betrayal, abandonment, this urge to maybe move closer to the betrayed partner or to the betraying partner and seek love and validation, and then swing all the way over to the other end where they feel fear and anger and a deep desire to run from the betraying partner and never engage them again. It feels so out of control, so unpredictable, and so unmanageable. Feeling like you've lost agency of your mind, body, and emotions can stifle your healing process of getting through the betrayal and out of the trauma and back to stability. It also, I feel like, can perpetuate feelings of shame, these dark stories that you tell yourself, or low self-esteem, so the hurt and pain that occurs as a nature of betrayal trauma. The other thing that I notice is that when you have these explosive hijacking feelings, it can cause you to get trapped in your betraying, lying, manipulating partner's blaming narrative that you're the problem, you're the crazy one, or you're the cause for his or her acting out behaviors, cheating, lying, etc. So therefore, the process of taking time to sort through all these messy emotions that surface after a crisis, all the painful, intrusive thoughts that are coming through, completing and moving through that process can help return some agency and control back to your life and keep you or return you onto the path toward healing. It can help you move through crisis, lead to you better communicating with your partner or maybe your support team about what you need to feel safe in the future or now, can help you get unstuck in that betraying partner's blaming narrative or the abuse cycle, and move forward in healthier ways with your partner, your support team, family, and friends. Using these 4 steps that I'm going to talk about, plus these downregulation techniques that I've offered in other videos, are a really good kind of toolkit to help you in this crisis. So this is just basic cognitive behavioral therapy. It's such a simple intervention, but it can really be helpful to help you kind of slow things down and understand what's going on. So we all experience or process life through kind of 3 quick steps. We think, we feel, then we act. So a life stressor occurs, bad things happen, external events beyond our control happen in front of us, in our environment, external to us. And we experience thoughts, interpretations, perspectives, which lead to feelings, emotions, chemistry, hormones, which lead to behavior, coping skills, acting, etc. It's kind of this very simple, understated way of describing what's going on moment to moment, second to second in a crisis. But still, it's a starting point to kind of help you really bring into your higher functioning part of your brain what's going on here. So the 4 steps that I am going to encourage you to use to fully process any strong emotional experience or triggering event that is happening during this crisis is: 1, understand the content of the experience. What is happening? What triggered the event? What's going on? Begin to notice the physical sensations in your body and the stories buzzing around in your head. 2, dive deeper into the context of the experience. What's the bigger picture? How is this experience connected to previous ones? What's the history behind it? Has there been trauma around this experience? The shame stories? What are the layers of emotion tied into these stories? Then 3, bring in choice. What do you want to do about this triggering event? What's going on in your body? How do you want to react? What coping skills do you want to use? What choices do you want to engage to move through this experience? And then 4, communicate. What kind of questions do you need to ask for more clarity, either internal questions to yourself or towards another person involved in this experience? Do you need to talk this out further? Journal it, call your therapist, call a sponsor. So these are the 4 C's that I'm encouraging you to use to move through really messy, overwhelming emotions that occur. Again, the 4 C's are content, context, choice, and then communication. These 4 processes, at the very, very least, are just something that slows the crisis down, helps you move from immediate, overwhelming experiences and kind of allows more time and blood flow to bring up your higher functioning part of your brain. You all know that I'm a big fan of that. I want to also note a few things before we dive in. Every one of these emotions that you're experiencing, even the ones that feel like they're just not you, the anger, the rage, or just feeling shut down and like low functioning, unable to think and make sense of your thoughts. Every one of these emotions and the stories behind them are important. The goal is never to numb these feelings or emotions, ignore them, blame shift them, distract, project them onto others. These are all important, what I call like feedback loop, information in your body that is meant to help you move, from the discomfort and scariness and hurt and pain into some level of growth. Who knows what that has to be, but you have to really spend some time with the emotions to figure it out. So taking the time to master these 4 steps Can also allow you to separate out fact from fiction. What is a trauma response and a shame response versus something that's here and now, like a real issue that I need to work with. And then also separate out stories in my head or struggles that are caused by my partner's gaslighting behaviors, manipulation, and abusive tactics. Once you move through these 4 steps, you can also do a better job at figuring out a more congruent or productive response to it all, and just stop the abusive cycle in general. Additionally, these processes can help you practice empathy and compassion for yourself and what you're going through, rather than kind of just placing judgment on them. Oh, you're so angry, you'll never get over this. God, you're so sad. Why can't you get out of bed? What's wrong with you? If we take the time to do these steps and we don't just sit there and judge them and say what we woulda, shoulda, coulda been doing instead. One huge caveat, anytime I talk about messy emotions and betrayed partners, when addicts or your betraying partner are acting out, they will often trigger strong emotions from you because it's scary, it's unpredictable, it's inconsistent. You have lots of trauma and lots of shame around their behaviors. These betrayed partners understandably will respond with extreme emotions of anger, pain, crying, sadness. And it is not uncommon for your addict or betraying partner to turn it around and use it against you. So please make sure you differentiate the fact that these emotions are understandable. Can we always work to do better, cope with them better, move through them better in a more productive, congruent way? Yes, but never take on the story that your big emotions, your struggle in this crisis is wrong or bad, and the reasons, the justifications of your lying, cheating, betraying addict partner to do what he or she is doing. It is never justification. It never creates entitlement for them to go out and lie and sneak around and do their unhealthy behaviors. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 4 steps of exploring content, context, choice, and communication. And then we'll have some Q&A afterward. So first, we have to start with the experience at hand. What has happened? What exactly was the triggering event? What was the topic we were arguing about? What is the surface, as I tell clients, the surface issue, the present moment issue? So for sake of clarifying this exercise, I'm going to use an example. Let's say I'm a betrayed partner. I have already uncovered D-Day has happened, and I know that my partner, I caught him lying, cheating, sexually acting out. However, we're remaining in the relationship. He's trying to work on recovery, and I'm trying to recover and figure out how I want to move forward, figure out if my partner is going to stay sober, stay in the program, and if we can move to a healthier place and space. So the triggering event, the number one, the content of the experience, is that my partner is supposed to be at home at 5:30 from work. It's now 6:30, and he has not called, not texted or anything, but he is home late, and I am having strong feelings about my partner not showing up and being here. So the content, step one, is that what is the surface event that I am hooked by emotion on, that I am in a crisis due to? Well, my partner, who has a history of lying, not doing what he's supposed to be doing, he is now not communicative, off the radar. I don't know where he is. And there's a long history of him behaving nefariously around that. So that is the triggering event. I need to, in this stage of stage one, begin asking myself, what's happened? What is currently happening? Where am I feeling this in my body? Am I afraid, hurt, sad, angry? And for more simple problems, not this big example, but for more simple problems, this might be enough to just help me downregulate and move through an uncomfortable experience. but not for this example. So then let's move on to the next stage. We've taken a minute to say, this is what's going on. So then I need to dive into the longer, more painful, more difficult, messy process of diving into the multi-layered context of what's going on. This is where we do the work to build up the emotional muscle of exploring all the emotions involved, all the traumatic history involved, all the shame stories that unravel because of this surface triggering event. So first, I like to start with the story that's going on in my head. Because, oh man, just an event like that, a triggering event of my partner not showing up, not calling, there are going to be so many stories going on in my head. It's this stream of consciousness, right? These perseverating, intrusive thoughts that just start spinning everywhere. I want you to just let them rip, but do it mindfully. Pay attention. What are the stories that are buzzing around? So a triggering event will happen. The content of something will happen. Then I'm going to move to the context of, okay, what's going on here? He's cheating again. I knew it. He doesn't love me. I'm going to have to file for divorce. How could he do this to me again? How am I even going to afford to be divorced? I can't believe we had to do this to our children. I'm so angry. Why doesn't he love me enough that he knows how to be honest? Why can't he love and value me enough that he can consider my feelings? And then we'll move on through some other stories. The next is exploring all the feelings associated with the triggering event and all those stories going on in your head. Now, I always tell clients, thoughts are what go on in your head, these spinning, carousel of stories. Then underneath your chin is all the feelings, right? The tightness in your chest, the sickness in your stomach, the racing heart rate, the feeling of kind of sweating or discomfort. Feelings are chemicals and hormones that are released by your brain and create sensations in your body. The problem, and especially this is a problem with addicts, is a lot of these feelings and stories go completely unacknowledged. Why? Because it's really unpleasant stuff. Our body likes to move towards pleasure and run from pain, and a lot of these stories are related to shame, to trauma, to hurt, to pain, and our brain just doesn't either want to put the time and energy and blood flow and calories into processing them. And also they're so uncomfortable, my body just wants to avoid them at all costs. And again, the issue is time here. And a lot of when you're in crisis, there's so many different fires you're putting out and things you're doing that you don't always just have time to sit and process your emotions. So I realize this is a big ask. But nonetheless, the feelings have to be understood. So where am I feeling it in my body? Is it a heart? Is it in my stomach? What would I call this feeling? Internal family systems will call some of this stuff like your exiles. They're usually brought on by dark histories of wounds or scary things you saw or upsetting things that you experienced. They're dark stories. And so ask yourself, where did I learn that an experience like this, the one that I'm going through right now, is bad or dangerous or hurtful? Have I or someone else suffered because of something like this happening? What's the history around this? So my husband not coming home, I have a long history of him saying something but doing something completely different. A long history of him not being considerate of my feelings, how his behaviors impact me, of me feeling uncertain about what is actually going on, of being lied to, of being bamboozled. And I have to acknowledge all that. The exile stories are, those hurt children, the wounded kids in my heart and soul of why does no one take care of me? Why does no one consider my feelings in this situation? Why am I with someone who acts and behaves without a conscientiousness of how I'm experiencing life, how his behaviors harm me. We can go on and on and on. And believe me, this sounds overwhelming at first, but it gets faster, and as that muscle builds up and you get better at it. And I will also note, by the way, all of these steps are also helpful for your addict partners, because as you know, they too, more so, struggle with identifying what's going on in their head, what's going on underneath their chin and their body. And instead, they just skip straight to an unhealthy coping skill of numbing, ignoring, projecting, seeking intensity, seeking pleasure, instead of going through this whole process. So this can be helpful to them too. So back to breaking apart and digging into the multi-layers of context. Ask yourself, what is the real present day feelings going on, and separating it out between what is the trauma story and what's the shame story. So I'll note, this stuff is really complicated stuff and can be done with therapists. They can be helpful. I have groups that are kind of shame, resiliency, and trauma exploring that are like the Brene Brown Daring Greatly groups, Rising Strong. All of these workshops are templates for helping you explore all these topics, what's happening, how you're getting hooked by emotion, and separating out what is a shame story, where it came from, how it impacts you, etc. But trauma, there's three things going on. There's like the current emotions and what's going on and what you're experiencing. But then there's also, you need to understand that your brain sees things through two other survival tools, which is your trauma response and your shame stories. So your trauma response is like this fire alarm that your body has that references any kind of history of something that happened to you or another person that was scary or overwhelming, or you felt powerless around. And it records in your body to make sure you have a really strong response in the future to help you stay safe in the future. So if I see that my partner's been gone for an hour and I just feel this huge flood of strong crisis related emotions, anger, hurt, fear, sad, whatever, the current factual information is not that I know he's acting out or lying or sneaking around, but my trauma response is saying, uh-oh, this feels very similar to the days when he was acting out, lying, sneaking around. I bet that's what's going on here. Is it accurate? Is it inaccurate? We don't know those answers yet, but it's just important for you to know it's a trauma response. Because right now, no one's pointing a gun at your head. Your life is currently not being threatened in this exact moment, but your body is still in a heightened hypervigilant state of trauma, kind of getting ready for the next shoe to drop, for the next bad thing to happen. Is it inaccurate? We don't know, but just note that it's different. The other survival response that we have is this thing called shame, which I always say is kind of a messed up adaptive skill that our brain has adopted to kind of get through life. That anytime something sad, bad, scary, concerning happens, our brain will quietly, sometimes subconsciously, write a story about how it's our fault. So beyond the story of, how dare he's so inconsiderate, why hasn't he called me? I bet he's cheating again. What am I going to do? The shame story will quietly become focused on me. He's always said I nag him too much, or I ask for too much, or I had too many emotions, or I didn't respond the right way. Or then I just start criticizing myself. See, I was pathetic for hanging out here. I shouldn't have given him another chance. I missed all these signs. So we have to pay attention to not just the emotions that we're having in the present due to this triggering event, but the trauma history that's going on and the shame stories that make up the whole contextual physiological experience that we're having in this moment. So just respect the fact, and your partner is going to need to, through education, respect the fact that when he shows up an hour late without texting or responding, it is not just that event that I'm going to be reacting to. I have a whole trauma history that's going to show up with me, and a whole shame list of things that's going to really offset my willingness to connect, to be vulnerable, to keep doing this, to engage. I'll be in full crisis mode. So if you don't go through these first two steps, you'll often respond fully in your shame and trauma response, rather than also acknowledging just the current information, what's fact, what's fiction. And I do acknowledge that when you are living with and loving and trying to engage with an addict, you may never be able to separate what's fact or fiction. So sometimes you just kind of have to go off your gut. And I know that's so confusing, but that's where the nuances of doing these 4 steps with an addict comes in. You have to kind of figure out, what is likely happening here. You may never have the concrete yes, no answer that you're searching for. And I acknowledge how difficult that is. But at least it'll keep you engaged and have your prefrontal cortex fully turned on so you can be present and avoid you from being dissociated, shut down, avoiding, numbing, all the unhealthy coping skills. Okay, so step 3, we're bringing in choice. This is the action part. Okay, there's a triggering event, there's all the thoughts and feelings and experiences that we're having around it. And then this is where we get to bring back agency. We don't have control of our partner. We don't have control of our environment, but we always have control of the way we react to what's happening in us. And we don't always, our trauma shame responses aren't always congruent with who I am as a person, how I want to show up, how I want to be with my family and friends and other people, despite being in a trauma state, in a crisis state, day after day. So we're bringing back choice. You want to ask yourself many things. What do you want to do with all this information? What can you actually do? What can you assert in this situation? Addicts in recovery, when they find themselves in this state, will ask themselves, what's my part in it? If there is any, is there something I need to take responsibility for, even if it's to myself, my promises and commitments? And the other question they always ask themselves in the rooms is, how can I keep my side of the street clean? So those are some questions you can ask at this phase. You can also do a few things. You can use those down regulation techniques that I have offered you in like recent videos, what betrayal trauma does to your mind and body. I have a few others. Calm your nervous system, deep breathing. You're just trying to, again, bring more blood flow and time to your prefrontal higher functioning part of your brain, rather than that amygdala trauma, fight, flight, freeze, kind of like a cornered animal response that we are all capable of having. Ask clarifying questions. So Brene Brown will always say, you want to turn on your prefrontal cortex, get curious. Ask yourself questions, ask others who are involved with the event questions. Reality check. How true is all this information? What are the potential scenarios that I might want to hold space for? Literally do things. Send a text, call a sponsor, go to a meeting, go to the gym, phone a friend, meditate, turn on music and listen to it. Affirmations and recentering. Remind yourself, especially in these high crisis moments, to kind of ground yourself. Remind yourself your value and worth, what your goals are, why you're here, why you're doing this tough work, how you want to show up as a person, as a partner, as a mom, as an employee, as a friend, how you want to protect yourself or protect the loved ones around you. And some things that can help for a grounding technique is remind yourself when you are in these crises issues related to your betraying partner's acting out behaviors, is sometimes to remind yourself that the plan B. I can't always leave. I can divorce. These are options. We need to go to a therapist to talk out what just happened. I have a group coming up to get support. Come up with some plan B options that might return some agency and choice to your life. Then step 4 is communication. So this step occurs when the event involves another person. So there was an inciting event in the relationship, something happened. The 4th step, after you fully process what's going on internally to you, now it is your prime opportunity to kind of communicate what's going on to your partner. So you guys can use this to grow, to be better, to come to a better understanding. So the best format that I use for this is kind of a format I use for a lot of couples when they're trying to engage in upsetting experiences, share their experiences, is to say, when X happens, this is how I experience X. This is the story I tell myself. And then I need from you in the future for you to do X, Y, and Z. Now, I'm sure some of you who are listening who have betraying or addict partners who are not in recovery think to yourselves, there's no freaking way that I could have this level of mature, high functioning communication with my partner. To that end, I validate it, I affirm it, and I encourage you that unless your partner shows some emotional capacity to have hard conversations, to look at their part in all this, keep their side of the street clean, hold some space to kind of understand their trauma, their shame, their reactions to you having reactions, unless they can start kind of pulling apart this multi-layered process, maybe not by themselves, but even with the help of like therapists and them attending meetings, you're not going to be able to move into productive engagement with them with this. And then therefore, yeah, you're not going to feel relief. You can go to groups and you can kind of keep talking about this and notice that you're just kind of stuck in this cycle, but you're one widget in a system that's just not moving. So I validate that if your partner's still in denial, hasn't been putting in work, and blames the relationship issues on you and blames his acting out behaviors and choices on you in the relationship, I hope you just know by now that is not accurate. Do talk to a professional or your support group or others around you about whether or not you think a partner could handle having that kind of communication after you've processed your feelings. But if your partner is not capable of it, please note that I still want you to take the processing experience to someone. So take, the triggering event, the content, the context, and the choice, and bring it into a therapist's office, your groups, to people who can understand what's going on, because this helps you validate what's going on. It helps build the muscle so this becomes a more natural flow in your thought process. It further down regulates the physicality of the crisis, the physiology of feeling so overwhelmed, so hurt. It can release some of the perseverating thoughts, the intrusive thoughts. It can help you practice shame resiliency, which again, we talk about that in my workshops with Daring Greatly and Rising Strong and more. So I would encourage you to just kind of write these down, and sometimes an explosive event can occur. And in that moment, you're not able to sit down and process this stuff, but then you can maybe journal on it using these 4 C's and come back to it and revisit it if you're in couples therapy or when you and your partner are in a calmer, better place and state. That's all okay. I wanted you to know that some of this material that I do cover is part of my 10-week Life Anonymous group that I have. I'm probably going to be adding another Life Anonymous group. That's the book that Scott and I wrote, acknowledging that the 12 steps can be helpful to not just addicts, those who identify as addicts, but also people who might love addicts or who are just suffering and struggling and need some help and structure to move through it. So that will probably be posted soon. You can join me on Instagram at KristinSnowden and find out about when I'm posting new groups, discounts, when I'm going to have new free webinars scheduled. And also, Scott and I will be releasing an audiobook, an audio version of Life Anonymous in the next couple weeks. So if you join my mailing list or social media, you'll be finding out about that. And now I'm opening up to all Q&A. We are coming up on our 1 year post D-Day, and I'm feeling so much more flooding than I have in recent months. I feel like he's in good recovery. He's empathetic and holds space for me and my emotions. Why am I feeling flooded and seeing um, images of the affair partner in my head, especially during vulnerable things like kissing and sex? Well, I think it's really great that you identify the triggering event is when you are making yourself vulnerable during sex or an intimate act of kissing. That's saying kind of like, I'm letting you back in. You have a strong trauma wiring that will override a lot of your behaviors that will be triggered and just say, are you sure you know what you're doing, lady? Like this person, let me send you all these flashbacks in your head, remind you of the affair partner, remind you of all the heinous acts that your partner did, because that trauma part of your brain that doesn't care about your relationship, it doesn't care about you sleeping at night, it's just trying to keep you alive. And it is never going to forget how scared you were, how blindsided you were, how much you just did not see this coming, and how powerless you felt. It records all of that deeply into your body. And anytime you expose yourself vulnerably to this person, it might get flared up and say, oh my gosh, let me remind you why you shouldn't be doing this right now. It's a part of you. It's not all of you. It's survival response. It's not always accurate, which is again why I encourage trauma interventions such as EMDR, neurofeedback, IFS, somatic experiencing, because it is a trauma wiring. It is imprinted in your brain. Like it's nothing to be ashamed of. I get why it's so upsetting. But the body keeps the score, and the score is that you're coming back a year from an overwhelming, devastating time in your life. And the part of you, it kind of feels part of you calming down and letting him in. And that's when it wants to kind of jump out like a jack in the box and say, don't do it, and give you all these flashbacks and evidence about why you need to keep your distance. I personally find that like EMDR and other trauma interventions can help you with that. So that is it, everybody. And I so appreciate so many good questions. I always get such great questions from you. You are always welcome to email me at KristinSnowdenMFT@gmail.com. But again, I'll encourage you to join my mailing list if you ever want to join any of my groups in the future. Thank you so much for letting me spend this time with you. And hopefully we'll interact in the future.